Okay, this is Professor Conk. I wanted to go over some basic navigation and placement of objects and some basic how-tos within your application to get started. Um, this site here this application I've created is called Open Websites, and it's a site that allows users to click on a link label and actually launch the site. Go ahead and show you what it does first before we get started. There's a splash screen, just multiple links. So if they click on Google, it's going to go to that site. If they click on, say, RBC Eagle, it's going to go to RBC Eagle. I also put in here a couple other sites like the book site for the book we use for the class, VB site, Pandora, Facebook. So these are link labeled. The other one they can do on a file menu is click on Launch Website, and the user can type in their own URL that they want to go to, and it'll launch that as well. And then finally clicking File, Exit to exit the application. So let's first talk about layout of the application. On the left is your tools, right is your Solution Explorer, and bottom right your properties as always. For the objects to be placed here on the form, used a table layout panel. Trick on the table layout panel is make sure that you actually resize the panel before you begin to add objects into the panel. Like for instance on this one, I believe I added a row and a column, and to do that you just go up here to the top and you can click add row or add column. Like for instance, if I added another row here, it would give me a line, and then I can drag that where I want it to go in the form. Same thing with a column. You can also edit rows and columns here. By default, the columns 1, 2, and 3. Let's see, 1 is 50%, 2 is 50%. I'm going to change the third one here. It actually says it's an exact 182 pixels. But I can actually change these to percentages as well to be roughly 33% on each one of these, since there's only 3 columns. There we go. Same with the row. I've already done that. The columns, let's go with the row. Row, I've got 3 rows as well. So we'll do the same thing. Do 33, 33, and 33. Make it a little even. Lastly, once you throw in objects into each one of these cells, like I threw a link label in here. A link label is actually an object that allows you to use a hyperlink, displays a label control that supports hyperlinks, functionality, formatting, and tracking. One of the things when you put an object in the cell, you need to go into the anchors. By default, the anchor for an object mostly is going to be top and left. And this is what it looks like by default. You want to change that if you want it centered all the way around. If you wanted it to be right justified, you leave the right one there, like so. If you want it right justified and center, if you want it right justified towards the bottom, so on and so forth. I'm going to put it back towards the center. So that controls the placement of the object or the alignment of the object or control within the cell. So again, so far I've got the table panel. Looked at that, make sure you resize it before you add any objects. After you've resized it, make sure you also add in your needed cells or rows that you're going to need. You can always add more later, as I've just done. And then if you need to manipulate the placement of each one of those, you can actually go into the edit rows and columns like I've done here, and you can edit those. Generally, percentages is the way I go with it, but you can do absolute pixels as well, or you can do auto size. The other thing you might want to do on this one is we're going to put a border possibly around the link label to just make it look better. And there's a border style. We'll do fixed on all of these. And actually I can hit the shift key on my keyboard and select all of these objects, these link label objects. And I can go here and do a border style of fixed single to all of the objects, and it'll be applied to every one of them. So now when I run this application, it's going to be split up by boxes now instead of no lines whatsoever. You'll notice there's some spacing here, but no spaces in between the rows. And you can fix that easily. There is what's called padding on the table. I can click on the table again here and go down to there is padding available to me. Right now it's 0, 0, 0 all the way around. But I can do a padding on, say, 3. Make it a little higher than that. Maybe do a 5. This is going to pad it to give a little bit more space aesthetically in between the columns. There we go. So a little bit more space here. Okay. Now, this is just a simple label, just for labeling purposes of the application. So far in your book, you've not really created menus, but I've created a menu for this, and I'll show you what this is. Up at the top, you'll see a file menu on my application, Launch Website and Exit. What I'm using for that is a menu over here, underneath the menus and toolbars, the menu strip. When you click a menu strip and drag it over to your form, it's going to allow you to add in menus. I have File, then Launch and Exit. And you can actually type in other as you go here. Other type of menu types. So it could be an example of, say, Help might be an example. Options might be an example. So on and so forth. I'm going to go get rid of those because I don't want those in there. Do a Control Z to go back on what I've just added there. There we go. So now let's get to the code. As always, at the top of the code here, I have the standard name, class name, application name, and date. To get to the code, simply double click on the object on the form, and I'm using a protocol called system.diagnostics.process.start. What this is going to do, as it says here in the note here, when you hover your mouse over it, it starts a process resource by specifying the name of the document application file and associates the resource with this component. So what this is going to do is it's actually going to launch, in this case, google.com with the default web browser. You can actually put a comma after this as well, after the website, and you can actually determine what application you want it to fire with. By default, again, whatever your default browser is. But so if you wanted it to be Internet Explorer, it'd be iExplorer. If you wanted it to be Firefox, Firefox. But we'll just leave that out for now. The way it runs, fine. The way it runs right now, just it'll actually start up your default browser and launch Google. Here's a Yahoo, MSN, Rock Valley College, Eagle, the book's website, Microsoft website for Visual Studio, Pandora music site, Facebook. So that's all of these buttons here, all these link labels here. Next, in the File menu, to get to the code for the File menu, just go to the File menu, double click on the area you want to fire when they click on it. Notice it's a click event of that strip menu item. I first declare a variable called strWebsite, gets a string. Dim strWebsite is string. I use what's called an input box. Equals input box, please enter in website, period. Example, http://google.com, comma, enter URL in quotes, which would be the title. It'll actually give you all this information as you're typing it in. It'll tell you what it's for. So what this is going to do is prompt the user to enter in a website. Then it takes that string that has the website they typed in, and what I'm doing here is I'm using a string test. If this string starts with http://.toString.toLower, then it's going to fire that website that they've typed in with this protocol. This protocol is going to be needed for the system diagnostic process start to know what application to run this file with. If it was just, for instance, google.com, it wouldn't know what to run it with. So this would be needed. The preprocessor directive here would be needed. The reason I put in the .toString.toLower, it's going to, say they typed in a caps http:// it would not catch it if I did not put a .toString.toLower. It would be an exact case sensitive reference here. So by converting it to .toLower, regardless of what they typed in, it's always going to convert it to a lowercase HTTP. So if they don't put the HTTP preprocessor directive information in here in the string, then it's going to go to this path and put it in there for them along with what they've typed in, say google.com. I'll go ahead and put a break here, and you can do this in your code as well to see how things are working. You'll notice when I click here, it puts a little red dot and it puts a breakpoint on that line. I can also put one here on this line as well. Let's go ahead and test that custom menu for launching a website. The first time I'm going to go in, I'm going to just type in google.com, and we'll see where it hits on our breakpoint. Okay, launch website. I'm going to type in just google.com. Click OK. Alright, you'll note here the little yellow arrow on the red dot. That's where it stopped. What this means is that there was no HTTP it started with on that string, so it went to the else path, because the first argument, if this is true, it goes here. If it's false, it goes here. So what it's going to do now is launch the http://google.com. There we go. Now let's go back and do it again. This time we're going to put in all caps HTTP, and we'll put in another website. Let's go ahead and put in like facebook.com. Click OK. Go ahead and launch it. going to catch it on this line and then launch it. One of the things I had to just change here on this was the logic here had the dot to lower here. It should actually be on this line here. Converting on this line to to lower, regardless of what they type in the input box, it's going to go to to lower. So let me put another breakpoint there to show you that. Okay, so I'm going to go to launch website. We'll do caps, lowercase, caps, lowercase. Put your mouse over, put my mouse over it here. Notice it's all lowercase. HTTP is all lowercase now because of this .to lower right there. And then it's going to prompt it now to go to that website with the system.diagnostic.process.start. Okay. Well, that concludes the tutorial on putting objects on a form and adding a few new objects that really have not been went over in the book. Try to do this maybe every other week, give you a little bit extra. A couple is the menu, not went over yet. Well, you know how to do that now. Again, just clicking on the menu item here, menu strip, throwing it on there, putting in the details for the menu items. I put launch website and exit. Also on the exit menu here, when I double click on exit, it brings me to an application.exit code, which I would like you to start using on all of your applications when it comes to exiting. I believe the book has you use me.close. Application.exit is probably a better one to use, especially when we get into using multiple forms. Link label, talked about that, and also resizing the table, layout table before putting objects in there. And then the objects that you do put in here need to be adjusted or however you want them as far as placement with the anchor property. Okay, well, that concludes the tutorial, and if you have any questions, you can email me as always in the website.